One male exposed wife's cheating over 24 years. The daughter I raised with her is not even mine. So I did this and got my revenge. I'm in my early 60s. For days back, I received a mail that threw me into an existential crisis. Not something where I would want to be in the last leg of my life. I found a letter in my mailbox that someone named Mr. X had sent his piano and a watch to my wife. These were not ordinary stuff. It was an heirloom kind of thing that was passed on for many generations in his family. Of course, he mentioned these details in the mail. This stuff was not even for Mary solely, but for my daughter. That Mr. X was not someone from our family or friends. I had heard the name before, but couldn't place my finger on who this guy was. Mary reminded me he was her piano teacher 3 decades ago. I asked why he would send his family heirloom to my daughter, or even to Mary. She had no answer. She just said, "I don't know." It was my daughter's pre-wedding dinner that evening. For a moment, I thought it was his wedding gift, but the question remains the same. Why would her piano teacher, who hasn't been in touch for 24 years, send a gift to my daughter, and that too his family heirloom? The question lingered in my mind, but I let it slide for the moment. It was a busy day, and all of us already had knee-deep work before the festivities. As the guests came in and the ceremony began, I almost forgot about the mail. We slept very late that night. The next morning, I was still in bed with last night's hangover when someone relentlessly knocked on the door. It was the guy from the courier delivering the piano and the watch which that mail talked about. I wish I was in my senses to inquire more about it, or probably just refuse to receive it. But what I did was just sign and take it. I called Mary, but she wasn't home. She didn't even leave a note. My hangover was gone seeing that stuff. I freshened up and called Mary, but she didn't respond. My relentlessness grew, and I searched for the letter, and to read it again to draw any clues. I couldn't find the letter. I had kept the letter in my bedstand drawer. I searched for it elsewhere and found it in a different drawer. Clearly, Mary had read it when I was asleep and kept it inside a different drawer. She came back in the afternoon. She royally ignored the huge piano kept in the living room. I asked her why her teacher sent his heirloom to our daughter. She gave me a look and said, "How I'm supposed to know this? It's been 24 years since I've met him. Maybe he sends something to all of his students." I nodded and asked her if she had read the letter we received yesterday. She said no and raced through the kitchen. Evidently, she was escaping the confrontation. Since then, she's not talking to me properly. I'm participating in that distance too. I'm also ignoring her. The way she lied to my face has gotten into my nerves. I don't know whether I should wait and let the situation cool off before having a confrontation, or if I should find out the truth myself. Not sure what was the history between Mary and her piano teacher, but there was definitely something, even if it wasn't transient. I've been headed to add context. I've been married to Mary for 32 years. I've looked upon her as the perfect wife and perfect mother to our daughter. She's a homemaker while I'm the house provider. Hard to relate for this generation, but this was the setup at our time. I was married quite early. Was doing odd jobs. Wasn't making much, but I was resilient about having my own house before planning a child. After slogging my butt thin, I got a decent job, but it needed intense travel across different time zones. I used to be out for most of the days. It was a small company just spreading out its wings to the different nooks of the States. I joined as a sales rep and eventually climbed the ladder of sales head, business dev, and expansion manager. Mary was understanding about my work commitments, but she used to be upset that I wasn't giving her enough time. She wanted to have children, but I was just not ready for such commitment at that time, both financially and emotionally. Majorly financially. I wanted to give the best life to my children, and at that time, I neither had money nor time. I made her understand my concern, and she was on board with my plan. I asked her to seek a part-time job or pursue a hobby. To get rid of her loneliness, she joined a piano class. She's a music enthusiast. I encouraged her to pursue it seriously, but she looked at it as more of a hobby. I was happy that she got something to divert her time and mind. Mary stopped complaining about my absence. She was now busy with her practice and classes. I felt a relief back then. Little did I know that it would come biting me after 24 years. I had met her piano teacher twice. Once I came early for my work trip. Mary wasn't home. It was the time for her piano lessons. I went to pick her up. She introduced me to her teacher and her friends there. The teacher looked the same age as me, probably slightly older than me. That's when I met him for the first time. The second meeting with him was when my daughter was born. He dropped by at her house. I was home at the time. He brought gifts for our daughter. None of the two times I ever suspected anything fishy about the relationship. He seemed to be a sober gentleman. They both acted very normal. Mary left piano classes after conceiving her daughter. Her pregnancy was complicated, and the doctor had advised her to be in complete bed rest. On that grounds, I took a transfer to a ground office job, so then I could take care of Mary and my baby. After our daughter was born, I asked her to restart her piano hobby, but she said she was busy raising our kid. I offered to partake in the responsibility of the child, but she said she would manage it. I focused on earning money and providing livelihood for my family. Eventually, I felt she had forgotten about her hobby and had moved on. She used to own a piano back then, but God knows what happened to that. It suddenly disappeared from the house. I remember I asked her about it, and she said she no longer enjoyed piano. That was it. This happened at the birth of my daughter. The next 24 years of our life had been so smooth. We felt like my daughter brought good tides into our life. That year my company hit its biggest milestone. I got a good promotion with the hefty raise. I bought a small but cozy house with a front lawn where my daughter grew up making memories. Everything seemed so perfect, and then bam. That one letter shook the core of everything. Update 1. I know I've been avoiding speaking the inevitable truth. All the pieces joined together hinted that Mary had something more to do with her piano teacher beyond taking lessons. My house got cold after that day. Mary and I were avoiding each other's presence. Felt like my dread was coming true. A couple of times I asked Mary if she wanted to talk about something, but she all rightly refused to address the elephant in the room. Honestly, I was also so pissed off that I didn't put any effort into fixing it. Instead of begging Mary for the truth, I decided to find it out myself. I went to the courier company which delivered those parcels in the mail. Not so easily, but I was able to get to the address of Mr. X. He was put up in a remote countryside farmhouse. It took me 4 hours drive into that place. Spotting his farm was also a challenge in a low-network zone. Thanks to his little fame in the area, a local garage owner guided me to his house. Mr. X had spent his last 10 to 15 years teaching music to the young boys and girls of that place. Reached his house to find he was dead. My rage subsided into numbness. I didn't know how to feel about it. There was a caretaker and another elderly man who introduced himself as Mr. X's cousin. He was the one who facilitated the shipment of piano and watched him a house after Mr. X's demise. He told me he did whatever Mr. X's lawyer instructed him to do as per his will. Mr. X never married. He didn't have any children. He had no heir to inherit his belongings. His cousin clarified that Mr. X had willed his property to the charity, whatever little he had, but the most precious thing, his piano and his watch, he had given to my daughter. I asked him if he knew anything about Mary. He said no with a straight face. I tried probing him more, but he said we should respect the dead and get over it. I took the hint, thanked him, and left. When I came back home, Mary was lying lifelessly on the couch. First time after that day, I had seen her face properly. She had grown pale. I sat down. My demeanor had changed. I asked her if she knew about Mr. X's demise. She looked at me with teary eyes and said, "So you went there?" I nodded. She knew about it. After long silence, I asked her, "Will you be confessing now?" She held my hand and broke down. Her confession went like this. "It was a one-time mistake. My loneliness tricked me into this. You were always staying out. I created for you emotionally and physically." Her physical relationship had a dry spell for months. Even when you were in town, you were so busy at work that you were ignorant of my needs. I wanted to stop her midway and say that I wasn't enjoying it either. It was difficult for me too. It was no fun leading a nomadic life, hopping from one city to another without adequate sleep and food. But I did all of it to give my family a good life, and I was successful in doing that. We have a decent life. You never had to think about household budget, never had to compromise on the lifestyle she had led. My daughter went to the best school, got the college education of her choice without any education loan. I funded it. All of this comes with a price. You can't just eat the meat and thrash away the bread. You got to bear the bad to be able to enjoy the good. But all this meant nothing especially now when the ship had already sailed. She cried and said, "I'm sorry. I never intended to cheat on you, but it just happened in the heat of the moment. I feel very guilty about it. I wanted to confess and come clean when you returned, but didn't want to hurt you with the truth. You were so happy with the news of the baby. I was scared that the truth would ruin everything. In fact, I tried telling you the truth, but you were so happy with the news of the baby that you didn't even notice that I was upset and guilty." The moment was like, wait a minute. What? What truth about the baby would have ruined everything? She kept bawling and choking with her cries, but I grew restless. I lost my patience and yelled at her, asking if our daughter was not mine. She nodded and said the baby was of Mr. X. I slumped down on the couch. I felt the gush of emotions of betrayal, emptiness, and crisis. The daughter I raised for 24 years is not even mine. I'm getting to know this truth in my 60s. I suffered from a mild heartstroke last year. It gives me shivers to think. What if I had not survived that attack? I would never have known the truth. I would have died thinking she was my daughter. Mary held my back, cried, apologized, and said all sorts of things like forgiveness and moving on, but I had zoned out. I was lost. I stood up to leave. Mary held me and begged me not to leave. I told her I needed some time to myself to process this trauma. I drove off my camper for more than 50 miles before parking it sideways and breaking down like a puppy. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know what others would have done in this situation. Without sounding mean, I'm not looking for any advice. I may not work in my situation. I'll decide for myself. Using this space as a channel to pin down my emotions, heartbreak at 60 is not easy. Don't even have friends to discuss this, and neither have the health to drink and piss off the pain. Update 2. I went back home the next day. Mario was sleeping in the bedroom. I hadn't answered her calls and texts since that day. The condition of the house and the kitchen gave an eerie vibe. Looks like she hadn't cooked or eaten anything since last day. I opened the refrigerator to grab something. Mario was woken up by that. She came and hugged me. She was again trying and apologizing. She swore that it was a one-time thing and she had never cheated on me again, and she had quit her piano classes after the encounter. She said it wasn't an affair. She didn't love him. Neither had any feelings for him. It was all about loneliness and needs which I was unable to fulfill due to my work commitment. I asked her to calm down and sleep. She insisted we talk and resolve the matter. I said not now. You don't look fine, so rest and we'll sort this out later. I was starving for the last 2 days, so grabbed some leftover porridge from the refrigerator and ate it. She forcefully nibbled some berries. I crashed on the couch. She asked me to sleep with her in the bedroom, but I refused to share the bed with her. She sat by me on the couch, but I insisted that she rest inside. I was pretending to be asleep and calm, but in real life I was not. I wanted to get out of her sight. When I sensed that she was in a deep sleep, I slowly crawled into my room and grabbed my basic essentials. Clothes, gadgets, important documents, cards, and cash money. I packed some kitchen stuff and bedding, loaded it into my camper, and drove off planning to live my camper for the near future. My van was not a perfect, conducive place. I had to fix a lot of stuff. I went to the garage to get the basics fixed, but they needed 2 days' time. I said don't be bothered and left. I brought the sink, pipes, and toolbox and fixed the basic amenities. Have set up a makeshift kitchen stand with microwave, toaster, and air fryer at one corner of the camper. The sink is now up. The exhaust and heater are working fine. I bought some batteries to cater for the emergency power supply. Otherwise, using the charging station to charge everything. I have to use a public restroom to unload the dump and refill the water container. I feel a lot more free and mobile now. I have switched off my number. I would be taking a different number for official purposes. Parking in the night had been a struggle in the first day. I know some of the residential spaces don't allow campers to be parked near their houses. To be safe, I'm parking at a gas station for the night. Not all, but some of them offer parking spaces at a minimal surcharge, and some are free. I'm now planning to drive to the south to live by the sea for a few days, or a few months maybe. I don't know, but before that I would need to stock up on enough supplies. Going south involves driving through thick woods on the way. Need to ensure that the camper is robust to sustain the long journey. Update 3. Amidst all this chaos, I almost forgot that yesterday was my daughter's wedding. After knowing the truth, I was struggling to call her my daughter. The dynamics have changed. As mentioned in my last update, I was on my way south. I traveled almost 100 miles away from the city when I got an email. I was resting in the afternoon and scrolling through my mailbox. My daughter had left a long, hearty message for me. Mary had confessed the truth to her. The realization hit me hard that I was ruining her wedding, and when I read her message, I couldn't stop myself from running to her. Ignore the formatting error, pasting the message directly here. Dear Dad, don't be mad that I called you Dad. No matter what the truth is and what you ought to believe, you'll be my dad and I love you. You've been an amazing father, the best I could get. Tomorrow's my wedding, a big day for me. I wanted you to walk me down the aisle. Please show up for the sake of the 24 years of love you have showered on me. But even if you decided to own me, I would respect that and still love you, your daughter. There was a drugstore in front of me. I rushed in there and requested the cashier to let me make a phone call. I called my daughter. She broke down on hearing my voice. We both cried for a good few minutes. I promised her I would walk her down the aisle. She assured me to keep my visit a secret from Mary. She gave me the exact time she would step out of her room for the ceremony. I drove back to the city and parked it at the gas station at night. She arranged for parking space near the venue. I got ready and remained in my van. When she got ready, she sent one of her bridesmaids to escort me inside through the back door. I was not hiding from anyone but Mary. Not hiding exactly, but I didn't want to have any face-off with her. By then, everyone was seated at their respective places. I walked her down and gave her hand to my husband. I saw Mary in tears sitting in the front row. When everyone stood up to clap and congratulate the newlyweds, I disappeared. Later in the evening, I again got an email from her, thanking me for saving her day, and basically the repetition of the same stuff she said above. She didn't get into my relationship dynamics with Mary or asked me to reconcile or forgive her. That was mature of her. I didn't tell her I was heading to, but she might have got the hint that I was going somewhere since I was living in the camper. She requested to keep in touch. I went through a wave of emotions in these last few days. Heartbreak, betrayal, bitterness, to healing. I'm guilty of admitting that I hated to know that she wasn't my daughter. I pledged to never see her again and even disown her. But when I received her message and when I saw her at the wedding, I felt nothing but a father. I found no difference in my emotions. She might not have my genes, but she is still my daughter. I have raised her with my love and care, and I'm going to be there for her like a dad irrespective of the truth. Update 4. I know it's been a long since I've updated this. Everything relevant happened. I have been living peacefully by the beaches. I had no updates about Mary until this morning. I literally got goosebumps typing her name after so long. I had never mentioned her to anyone here. Though I have ghosted her, it feels like she's a ghost to me. She doesn't exist to me. I knew at the back of my head she would be traumatized by my ghosting, especially when I was leading the life we had decided to live together. We had plans of renting the house and living in a camper by the sea in our retirement phase. Got to know from my daughter today that Mary is sick and hospitalized. She has also been seeking therapy, but it hasn't helped her much. I don't know if I am angry with her or if I am upset with myself. I told her that I would have forgiven her if she came clean back then, but I don't think I would have forgiven her even back then. One time or multiple times, cheating is cheating. This is not only cheating but a sheer betrayal. She kept me the dark about the child. While confessing, she also said that if not for that cheating, she wouldn't have been a mother because after our daughter we still had unprotected sex, but she didn't conceive. Yes, she questioned my potency. I should admit that she might be right and I was offended or maybe hurt because of this statement. I didn't have the courage to mention this in my earlier updates. Now I feel I have grown past that feeling. Daughter requests that I visit Mary once if possible because her health is deteriorating. I think I'll head out to meet her once, but reconciliation is off the radar.